Thanks for coming. This is our first meetup for B2B Growth NYC, and we'll be doing these once a month. Everyone will be getting emails once a month about our next ones, and they're going to be super exciting. So this is a great panel that we put together. We have Eric from FischTank PR, we have Scott from Totib Growth, and we have Forrest from MakerBot, and Patrick from Board Studios. And we'll get started with some questions about how, what lessons they've learned, what's working, what's not working in B2B growth. And first of all, just to introduce everyone, I will let them introduce themselves. So we can start with maybe say your name and what you've been up to, what's your company, what are you doing?
Sure. And let me know if I'm not loud enough. Generally not a problem, but my name is Eric Fischgrund. I'm the founder of FischTank Marketing and Public Relations. We're a firm based about 200 yards from here at 32 Broadway. We provide media relations, content marketing, SEO, social media, email marketing for a number of companies in different industries, business or B2B and B2C technologies, renewable energy and sustainability, healthcare, professional services. So not quite a specialty firm, but not completely general either. We've got 12, soon to be 13 full-time people working. We've grown steadily and organically over the years. I do have a partner named Matt Bretzius, who's not here tonight, but has been integral to our growth since he joined me over 4 years ago. And this year, actually I would say really last year was a big step forward for FischTank in that we always knew about how to blog. But maybe we didn't know how to leverage a blog properly, or we didn't know how to use it for data capture, or we didn't know how to change analytics and keyword targeting. Let's say we knew a little bit about creating Crunchbase and Wiki and things like that, but maybe we didn't fully understand SEO. And again, I'm talking about the early days of FischTank, but I would say certainly our approach to integrated marketing the last year and a half has moved us outside of being certainly outside of being a traditional media relations firm. We do much more integrated marketing. For some clients, it's much more of a business development objective or purpose, I suppose, that we serve. So, what I'm most excited about this year, I think, is bringing in more clients that are looking for something more than just visibility or exposure. Because, as a few of the guys in this panel will probably tell you, that can really only get you so far if you're not doing the right targeting or have the right objectives behind it that you can measure and build on for the future. So, is that all right? About 2 minutes?
Yeah,
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, on to you.
My name is Scott Swanson. I have a small growth consultancy called Totib Growth. I work with a number of venture-backed technology companies, typically enterprise-facing, and largely out of Seattle, weirdly. But we focus on very early stage and where companies have just decided to start scaling up paid demand and kind of demand in general. So how that manifests itself over time is we try to take over the inside sales team to some extent. We optimize their how they spend their time and questions they ask and how they engage with prospects, and we scale up their demand team and make sure that, or their content team rather, to make sure that they're producing the right content. We do, to his point, we look at search and make sure that everything that's being created, there's ample demand for it, and ensuring that that works for them. And then we manage their paid channels, and I'd say that's probably 50% of what we do is making sure that all the investments are being done thoughtfully and carefully, and providing the appropriate return. So, and then at some point, usually once a company hits about 100 employees and their marketing team hits maybe 5 to 10, we start to kind of back out of the engagement and move on to the next ones.
All right, excellent. Forrest?
Hi, I'm Forrest Leighton. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for MakerBot. We're a 3D printing manufacturer in Brooklyn. I've been there for about 2 years now. I kind of grew up as a B2B marketer. Started really, product marketing was my kind of core. I spent 11 years at Canon, marketing all kinds of stuff, and that was a really interesting, kind of grew up my corporate career there. Moved into the software space. So I think Canon was like the product marketing side. Then I moved into kind of the SaaS world, where it really became much more about demand gen. So we had a lot of sales guys that needed to be fed with a lot of leads and opportunities, and they seem to like those. I don't know why, but we need to do that as marketers. So so I kind of have that mix, I think, of product and demand gen, and then when I come to MakerBot, I'm kind of combining it all. So I have all aspects. I have a team of about 20 people today. And we have everything from PR to demand gen to vertical marketing to channel marketing, you name it, it's all there. A great creative group as well. And that's about it. I think, hopefully this will be good, and we'll provide some insights into kind of what's working and what's not.
Awesome. And Patrick?
Hey, so I'm Patrick Charron. I'm with Board Studios, and I handle business development. And Board Studios, for those that don't know, is we have a studio actually on the floor right above us. It's a small video studio, and we're specializing in video content marketing. So explainer videos, interview, podcast style video. So people can come in with their idea, with their scripts, and we can produce the entire thing for them. But also we want to focus on strategy, right? It's great. You have a great video, so what? Who's going to see it? How are you going to use it? That's where we really want to take it, right? We want to help you produce something that's great, but we also want to make sure that you're getting the most out of that video and build a long-term relationship with you so that you'll keep coming back, and we keep kind of introducing people to the concept of video content marketing, because I think it's something that people don't actually understand all that well, and they don't understand the value of providing value to your audience, right? Okay, you have one video, great. People see it after a few months, people aren't going to care about it anymore. So we want to continue that relationship and make sure that the content is fresh and that you're coming up with great creative ideas and that you're really providing value to your audience and to the people who are paying attention to what you're doing. So yeah, that's who I am and that's what we do.
Awesome. So just to summarize, we have more in the PR space, demand generation, more practitioner, B2B, and more on the video side, because we thought that these are very unique and different insights. And we'll start with, maybe you can tell us one key lesson that you learned in 2018 as it pertains to B2B growth specifically.
Sure. You want me to start again?
Yeah.
Cool. I'd say a big lesson that we learned over the last, certainly in 2018, is really how to challenge our clients. In the beginning, a lot of what we did, especially the first couple of years, was the client would say, this is what I want to be and this is where I want to go, and we'd say okay, and we'd run through walls and sometimes succeed and sometimes not, to get our clients the results that we thought would work. And even when we got them the results or the visibility that they were looking for, turned out that their strategy maybe wasn't the best, or their vision wasn't the best, and then that can obviously shorten the lifespan of working with the client. So I think we've naturally evolved to this over the years, but over the last year we've really been pushing our clients to, over the last couple of years, to really step out of their comfort zone. We've really been challenging them to come up with, whether it's proprietary data or something actually unique to say. We're sort of in this, not we, I guess, are not in it now, but companies tend to all want to comment on the same thing. And news breaks and they want to do a blog post about it, or they want to send an email blast out to their audience. And a lot of it's just very repetitive, and you've got all these guys who are just saying the same things and screaming and hoping someone recognizes them. So this last year we've really begun challenging our clients to do more, and that's resulted in increased scope and then budget for us. And also it's more rewarding work, it tends to be more beneficial, and it's definitely built some of the client relationships that we have.
And just to follow up on that, do you have a sense of how much better it is? Because I'm hearing a lot about using proprietary data to do a report, that everybody engages much more than the listicles that you have, all the traditional approaches. Is there any evidence that you've seen that one works much better than the other?
Definitely. I'm going to talk about it probably a couple of times today, but at FischTank we started using surveys pretty consistently with clients to get them to step out of their comfort zone. And the campaigns that we've done around surveys, we did one, I can't mention the company name, but around, it was breastfeeding at work, breastfeeding and breast pumping at work. And sounds like very niche in that it's not the sexiest topic. They had been commenting or providing thought leadership on like the listicle articles that you referenced for years prior to working with FischTank. We pushed them into doing the survey, and we're fortunate that we set up a Bloomberg exclusive, had all sorts of collateral, video, infographics, things of that nature. But then it was on Good Morning America the following week and just exploded from there. So trying to push people out of their comfort zone instead of saying something like, yes, there should be, lactation rooms on site at large companies, right? Everyone's saying that. It's a good example, obviously, of what I was talking about, challenging them. So challenge them to, survey people, ask hard questions, and it got them newsworthy results. And more importantly, it gave them a marketing tool up and down their channel that, even if there was no media component to it, it would have been a successful program for them.
Thanks for the example. And
yeah, no problem.
Scott, key lesson in 2018?
Well, in 2017, the big buzzword was account-based marketing, and particularly in the enterprise space. And I've tried to practice it, the best I can in 2018, and I've found it to be a bit lacking as a strategy, at least on the enterprise side and on the corporate side. I feel I was pitched quite a bit on ABM, advertising, et cetera, and tried a handful of things without much success. So I would say that lesson-wise, I think account-based marketing kind of stays in field marketing and really away from product and corporate generally.
So is your observation that ABM may not have been as big as people thought? Is that?
That's been my takeaway. Yeah, that's been my experience with it. I would say at in an earlier stage companies, maybe it more so. But yeah, I've not seen good success with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Forrest?
Interesting. I got questions for both these guys, but I'll wait.
Okay, we'll have questions from the panel for the panel.
Yeah. Can I? No, I'll behave. But so 2018 was an interesting year. I'd say there was two big learnings. I'll cover one of them now and the other later. The two was, I'd say, data and infrastructure, and the second was the team building. So I'd say if there were like two wins for the year, it was in both of those areas. I'd say the data infrastructure was probably the most important thing for us as an organization. It's a big team. We have a modest budget. It's not a huge budget, but we got to count what's working and what's not. And I'd say the thing that lacked was like true visibility into like the entire pipeline, from like beginning stages of how traffic's coming to your website to end stages of what's popping out the other side in a deal. So, if you asked me 12 months ago, show me a report that can give me how much you spent on Google advertising or how much you spent on any paid media, and then what popped out the other side, it would be very difficult to make that correlation. Today, we can make it 100%. And I'd say that was a huge win because it really gave us amazing insight into what was working and what wasn't, and that we could put our dollars into the places where it made sense. And that's, I'd say, and I've seen it, and I've talked to so many other marketers, and it's like, they struggle with the idea of attribution. They struggle with the idea of like, everyone knows they need it, but then how do you get it? And then how do you make sure you're set up from an infrastructure standpoint to do it? It's not easy, especially in a company that had a lot of legacy data and a lot of legacy systems. So it hurt a little, I guess is the way I would say it. But at the end of the day, it was 100% worth it. So we're in a much better position.
Is that
today.
completely custom, or are you using third-party tools?
Well, so I mean, we're probably pretty typical in our stack, or I don't know how typical, but for a B2B company, we're Marketo, for marketing automation. We're Salesforce for our CRM. We're Magento for our e-commerce platform, and we write everything into a data warehouse from Amazon called Redshift. And then we visualize it with Tableau on top of it. So that sounds really nice, but to make sure that all the right pieces are writing in the right way and that those tables are set up properly and you have the right views, and so we found we were really good at collecting data, we were really bad at visualizing it. So that was kind of the big breakthrough there, and then making sure, understanding what's coming in, do I have the right things, and how do I create good reports out of that are useful.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And Patrick, key lesson?
I think a key lesson is, as far as video is concerned, I think there was a time where you could create a really great video, put some money behind it, everybody would see it, right? And it would provide you with, whether it's leads or whatever it is you want to do. I think now the game is changing so rapidly. Everything's like, each platform is no longer following the same rules they were following a year ago, nevertheless maybe 6 months ago. So I think now, let's say, for example, if a company creates an explainer video, which is something we specialize in. If you're a young company with a little bit of competition, but not too much, yes, you can create a great video, put some money behind it. It might get you that boost that you need to get known and for people to see you, to notice you. But I think if you're a big company or even a small company with hundreds of competitors, it's not enough. Paid advertising is not going to work because everyone's paying. Everyone's trying, and it's who's going to spend the most money. You're going to spend way too much for the little bit of eyeballs that you're going to get. So I think at that point, it's really more, okay, create great content, but use it more in a strategic way. Put it on your website, share it with your clients, get people to maybe share it in a more organic way instead of thinking that I can just create content, put some money behind it, and sit back and wait for results to happen. I don't think that's happening anymore. I think you have to be way more strategic, way more creative, think outside the box, and yeah, and of course, I mean, you need great content, great product, great services to back it up, but I think that's a major lesson from the last couple of years.
Okay, awesome. We'll move to the next question, which is what tactic has worked really well for generating B2B growth for you?
Well, you spoiled my surprise with your last follow-up. So I was going to talk about surveying, which I can still do just because it is something that I feel like we were doing here and there in the early days of FischTank, and then now it's something that companies are coming to us now on a very, some of them on a quarterly basis, but I think our firm is running 1 or 2 a month. The reason that I think it's been a big tool has not been because we've approached it from, okay, what's going to produce media coverage. It's because our clients are different, and some are B2B and some are B2C. It's been entirely focused on what's your objective. So for some, it's very easy, right? Like I gave you the breast pumping and feeding example. Maybe new moms is the objective, reaching new moms for them. Other clients, they're just looking for backlinks to their survey that's going to be hosted on their website so they can get an SEO boost out of it. Others are looking for something that they can turn into a white paper that they can put into their email marketing and business development system. Some just have sales teams that they're looking for. So I think in the last year, we've become much more active at, Patrick was mentioning, producing your own content, especially clients or companies that don't have a steady flow of announcements or news. We've been filling their creative cycle, which I think differentiates us from a lot of the media relations firms in New York that are strictly taking what their client gives them and telling them to get media coverage for it. Now we're trying to get our clients to skate to where the puck is going, get them to talk about certain subjects, and understand what the benefits are for them.
And when you create a survey, do you use any tools? Because I would love to have a survey and data for my company, but who am I going to send it to? Do you need email lists or followers, or how?
Good question. For some, we're able to, if they've got an extensive database, we're able to do something just more proprietary to their database. But for others, we'll use a third-party administrator, the survey administrator, excuse me. SurveyMonkey, everyone's heard of it, and you'd be surprised, how effectively you can put together cost-effectively you can put together a survey that's accurate and deemed credible by potential partners or customers or certainly the media. So, and then there's also some like more research firm, I guess, inclined survey providers that they give you a little bit more support and context going through the process. Totally depends on client and budget, but we've done surveys for as low as $1,200 and gotten way more ROI out of it, and we've done them for more expensive also.
Can I ask a question on the survey?
Yeah.
I can't help myself anymore, So you talked about the idea that the survey works from a PR perspective, but it also worked throughout the channels. Can you talk a little bit about like how was it used by the channel? So PR, that's clear, right? So you got good stories, you got Good Morning America, you got amazing hits from it. So you get that kind of top level view. But then how are the salespeople using it, or how does that message then transcend down into the organization?
It's certainly dependent upon client. I would say mostly from a sales perspective. It's become something for them, like whether it's a email marketing touch point, or we had one client who was able to actually create a panel at an event around a survey. I'm sure because they were a sponsor also, but it just gave them another tool to get in front of people. So we've worked with, I gave an example already of an e-commerce company. So we have an aftermarket automotive retailer we just did one with, which is also e-commerce, but we represent a on-demand life insurance app. And we just did one with them last week, and it had nothing to do at all with insurance, which was sort of the interesting part of it. But they were looking at it more for some of their partners for their lead generation, so that they're able to publish it on like their affiliated marketing websites and drive traffic. So it's very case by case. I would say sales are, there's almost always going to be some sort of sales and SEO element out of it. And then actually one company I should include, they did it just for internal as an internal marketing tool. It was about happiness in the workplace. And they wanted to show, because they have a large staff, and according to Glassdoor, things aren't always so perfect over there. They wanted to show that they'd been listening and making changes. So it was more of a, I guess you could call that internal marketing or an HR tool.
That's fascinating.
Scott, tactic?
I've seen a lot of success lately in offline campaigns, particularly mailing, which is highly unusual. And I was talking before about how ABM isn't very effective as an online avenue, but offline it's fantastic. I'll give you an example of a campaign we put together. It was a client was trying to reach very specific, very CIOs at Fortune 500 companies, right? So we're talking about just a handful of people in the world. And we put together an app. We built an app for an iPad, and we put these iPads in the mail and sent them to, 30 people at a time. And they're enterprise companies, right? So executives aren't allowed to accept gifts, right? So inside this box, we had cards in here that said, "Hey, give us a ring if you'd like to talk." And there's videos and explainers, and there's a pretty comprehensive app in terms of talking about capabilities and features, et cetera, and obviously happy customers, et cetera. But so they would call our salespeople to try to return them. And we'd have conversations with them, and it was from like a dollar per opportunity. It was the best producing campaign that I've ever been associated with.
You were able to convert people that called to return the thing they were sent to an actual sales opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah, and so it was. I wish I could take credit for the idea. It certainly wasn't, but I'll tell you something. The CMO at that organization, he's not an online person at all, so his brain's very much focused towards offline things, and this was a brainchild of his. I just happened to be there to help run it, but it was fantastic, and it continues to do well for them. And you buy the small iPads, the mini iPads at the time, they were a couple $100 a piece, and within that same company, we're talking about paying $15 a click for anybody searching for a specific term, right? So even if they kept them, it didn't matter. As long as we could reach them and talk to them, it was fantastic. I'd say like 1 in 3 turned into an opportunity or something like that. And we get them all back, charge them up, and send them back out again. It was really something.
Was the objective that they will have to return them and call you back?
No. The objective, the objective was definitely for them to reach out to us, right? To be impressed with the product, and I think in some cases that was the case as well. But I think more often than not, it was, like, hey, I need to get this back to you. Thanks for sending it. I shouldn't say nobody. Very few people were upset about it, right? Yeah. So I would say offline. I focus a lot on online demand, and so it's easy to lose sight of that. And I think particularly in our digital world, it's easy to lose sight of real world interactions, and that's certainly one that I would recommend.
Forrest, a tactic that you recommend?
Well, I didn't send anyone iPads, but I had someone send me a toaster, which was their dimensional direct mail piece, which I thought was a little crazy, but it didn't work.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm thinking they probably spent, I don't know, $40, $50 a piece between the packaging and everything else, and it's like...
Yeah, when you put it in the context of advertising, right? Like you're talking about $10, $15 a click for really targeted. You don't need to, and you're hitting exactly the right person, right? Like you don't need to convert every single one of them.
And they keep calling me, didn't you get my toaster?
There you go, you got something to talk about.
I haven't responded though.
Yeah.
So.
I knew a bank, I didn't work on this campaign, but several years ago, like a local bank in New Jersey, I'm sure that they did their targeting properly. They mailed a remote control race car to whoever they were trying to get to come in, and then said, you get the remote for it when you come in. And I don't know how much it costs to do those things, but I know that from the marketing firm that they did, that it was deemed successful. Yeah.
So my success is a little different than that one, but so I'd say like last year for MakerBot, we launched the biggest launch we've had in many years. So there was a huge amount of effort around kind of building out what our message was, around every piece of it. And I think the success we had, it's been amazing. We launched in December. December is also an odd time to launch something. It just timing, it kind of worked out, but it was really interesting because we got the amount of PR coverage we got because it was such a lull that everything that was going on, like we peaked extremely well and we got amazing coverage. And the thing I'd say is like from like the top down, like what worked really well was kind of the strategy of, we wanted PR for kind of the air coverage, right? So we did embargoes, we brought press in, we did, from Asia Pacific, from Europe, we flew people here, from US. We made sure that we were able to show the product. It's a 3D printer, so you need to see it. There's something very physical about it. It's not like an online app that you can just show. So we were able to control the message really well, and that translated extremely well. We trained all the channel partners across the globe on it. And we made sure that digital marketing, that we hit exactly the audiences we wanted to, and we were able to pick on each social network who we hit and when we hit them and how much we hit them. We created video content. Video content is great, but you're 100% right what you said before. I couldn't agree more, is that I think my organization suffered from it, creating content for content's sake. Yeah. Create more. Right? But more doesn't mean that it's going to work, and it's not prescriptive, and it doesn't have a purpose. If it's got a purpose and it's got the right place, then it can work and it can do something for you. So I think all of it down, and the thing that I'd say is, even if you listen, like I walk like on our sales floor and I can hear the salespeople and they're articulating the exact same message and the exact same value propositions that's through all of the messaging, like that was gold for us. Like that's something, if you can get that far, we've hit it from top to bottom. And the response has been really good so far. So I'd say that was like, it was a coordinated effort. So it's a little bit of everything. It's like having your messaging right, knowing your value proposition, make sure it's well defined, make sure it's well articulated, make sure you're training people on it, make sure your PR strategy is aligned with your digital strategy, make sure your content strategy is aligned with all of it. And it was like that combination of things. So it wasn't like one thing in particular that made it good, it was all of that together.
And previously you mentioned that you have figured out a way to do a lot of data for attribution. Could you give us an example or some insight from that? Like, is Facebook advertising better than Google Ads? Do you have anything like that you could share?
No, we don't know any of that. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So the thing about our business is, what I could see is that if I looked at all of the opportunities and leads that came in 2018, 50% of them were organic. So 50% of my business is organic. So what does that tell me I need to invest in? SEO. Right? I gotta have really good SEO to keep that going. I gotta have really good content that's gonna drive the right people to the right place at the right time. Facebook has been surprisingly good, much better than what I spend on SEM for Google. So in Google, I'm really good at branded keywords. You can bid on your own brand, and anyone searching for you will find you. It's an amazing strategy they have. They take all your money for that, but it does work, and it's effective in that. But you just got to put it in perspective that don't spend too much money there, because the non-branded keywords getting better, but it's not great. Facebook has been amazing. So if we can put things in front of the right audience on Facebook advertising, it's significantly greater. We're seeing probably, to answer your question, we're probably seeing a 4 to 5x return on every dollar we spend on Facebook. For Google, we're seeing probably 4x on branded, but we're probably seeing like 1x if we're lucky on non-branded today.
And for SEO, do you do any tracking in terms of ROI there?
SEO, what we're doing is we're tracking kind of our keywords, like where we're falling. We're tracking, like we kind of rebuilt our website and even the infrastructure and the taxonomy. That certainly had a big pull. But so from an ROI from SEO, I'd say I don't have like a number that I'd say I invest this much in SEO, I get this much out. What I know is that so much of my business is organic. We got to be really good at it. And so my site is really good. We have very good. We're rated extremely well, like and those things, but you can't just rest on it and say, oh, everything's great. You got to continue to invest, and you got to continue to make sure that the site's working the way you need it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And Patrick?
Tactic, I think, would be, again, comes back to video content marketing, but that's a very vague kind of term. And what I'm starting to realize is that it's about storytelling. What's your story? If you're a big company and you come out and you're like, we have the best this, the best that, okay, anybody can say that. Anybody can pay an actor to say that. Anybody can create a polished video to say that. But if I see someone who comes on camera and sits down and tells me something of value, gives me an inside look on what they've been doing, shows, you know, the behind the scenes, or maybe the CEO gets up and talks about their actual lives and they give me a real life example of something about the company that makes me connect to that person and to that company. That's going to have a much greater effect than some polished ad that anybody can create, right? With the amount of money, you can spend $1 million and create a Hollywood movie if you want as an ad, but it's not necessarily going to be as effective as someone who's actually on camera telling me something real about what they do. I also think it's an opportunity for thought leadership. It's an opportunity to establish yourself as an expert in your field, kind of like what we're doing here tonight, right? Where I can go on camera and I can educate people on what I do. So if I'm a startup, if I'm self-employed, if I'm a coach of some kind and I want to share, I want to tell people I'm good, well, I can go up there and say I'm the best, you should hire me, or I can deliver value. I can give them actual information that they can use, actionable things that they can use in their lives and think, wow, that information you just provided me with actually helped me. So when I need to hire someone, obviously you're going to be the first person on my list. So I think more and more we have to stop thinking that those traditional routes of creating polished, straightforward advertising work, because I don't think they're as effective as they used to be. I think more and more people want value. They want things that are original. They want things that make them think. They want things that make them cry. They want things that provide some sort of emotional trigger. And if you can do that, I think video is a very powerful way to do that. And I think we're seeing it because we're started using it for ourselves. We're putting videos out now where we educate people about video content marketing. And by seeing that we are experts in what we do, obviously they're going to trust us to then come and create that stuff with us. So, yeah.
I think the key is that prescriptive nature to it. Like, you're not just creating video content, so anyone could tell a cool story about anything, but it's specific to what you do. So it's like that's got to be a piece of it, because I think there's so much noise, right? So like in any organization, right, you got to cut through the noise, you got to figure it out. So what we found with the content piece of it is that if you're just general about the market, you know, so like your example, I'm interested in the insurance one where, you know, maybe it was a little bit broader topic. You know, maybe in some cases that works. What we found is that those kind of things, it's very difficult for those to cut through. Yeah. But whereas you're very prescriptive, then for the audience that you want, you know it's going to be something relevant, but be a good storyteller with it. Yeah. And I think that works out.
Yeah,
really well.
I think delivery is huge. You know, in some cases you'll have people that have great content, but they need a little help as far as delivering the content, right? And then you'll have people that are great at delivering, but they don't actually know what they're talking about. They're not necessarily, they're pretending, they're faking it, right? And I think video is it's very transparent that way. You know, if you don't know what you're talking about, it's going to be pretty obvious. If you're scripted, it's going to be pretty obvious. So you need to be able to sit there and talk. You know, you need to be able to display your expertise organically and truthfully, and I think the world is becoming more and more transparent, so you need to be able to do that. Yeah.
All right, and let's move on to trend, the biggest trend that you see in your sector for 2019. How will B2B companies grow in 19?
Sure. I'll start with one that's, I guess, more specific to FischTank, and then so maybe that's more to professional services firms. But in the early days of FischTank, I was, you know, attending conferences, going to meetups. A lot of them good, some of them not so good. We've probably all done those, and spinning my tires, right, so to speak. Over the last year, and certainly something I've continued heavily only in the first month of January, is actually talking to my existing clients and customers about their network. Seems like such a simple thing to do, but I got into the practice of it late last year, mainly because as we've grown, we've gotten to work with larger organizations who have relationships with other brands, and a couple of times I asked, hey, you know, we know you just partnered with this organization on this, whatever this announcement is, would you mind if I reached out to them about working with FischTank? And no one has said no yet, and it resulted in 3 new clients at the end of the year. One new one that's that's hopefully just going to be kicking off in a few weeks from now, and it's something that had not really occurred to me, which was looking in the network and saying like, oh, you know, this guy or this girl's connected to this person over at this place. Maybe I can ask them for an intro. And I used to feel like it's like you're already my customer and now I'm asking you for a favor. But people who I ask, I generally think are going to be happy with FischTank, and they've been very pleased to do it. And that's certainly helped us, especially in the last 6 months and moving forward. And it's something I'm going to be personally, and then also as a firm, pressing some of our account teams and employees and colleagues to do.
So that's like a referral. And how does it work? Can you give an example? Like you're connected to the VP of marketing of a company, you look at their LinkedIn network, you find another VP, and you reach out to one, say, can I reach out to get, what are the logistics?
In an instance like that, I might ask the existing client or person who I know, say, hey, I see you're connected with X, Y, and Z. If you have a real relationship with them, I'd love if you could make an email intro. And it's worked. It really has worked. And there's another example. I gave you the one of, we just worked on an announcement with Google Home and then a technology provider and then our client. We did not win Google Home's business, but our client did get us the other organization's business. And it was just from me asking, saying, hey, we really enjoyed working on this announcement. We know that your partner didn't really have an internal communications function, which challenged them at times. We think we could do a great job. Would you mind if I reached out? And the answer was yes, and we started working with them a few weeks ago. So,
do you reach out, or do they reach out on your behalf?
If it's someone that we just partnered with and they'd seen my name before, then I'll reach out. If it's someone who I've never spoken with, then I'll ask them to make an email introduction. Okay. And with an email introduction, even if we don't win the business, which is still happens all of the time, I don't think anyone has not responded yet. Even if they responded and said, hey, we're status quo for now, check in 3 or 6 months from now, that's at least something for me to put into my sales funnel.
And what type of hit rate would you say you have? Let's say, how many introductions or referrals did you have and how many did you convert? You said 3.
That's tough. Yeah, at least 3 or 4 clients in the last quarter, in the final quarter of 2018. We probably reached out to maybe 10 or 12 clients or 10 or 12 clients or companies through their partners. So it could be a little bit more than that. I think that would make it a little bit of a high hit rate. So I don't know, tough to really peg it. I think it's, for us, it's just always been more about the quality of the relationship than the volume. So I've tried not to take advantage of this practice. So if I have a client who, frequently partners with people, I'm not going to ask every single time. I'm going to try to pick my moments and, 1, see who are we a fit for, and then 2, do they even have a need?
That's terrific. I really like that approach. Yeah, I think we're coming up on maybe a recession or something like it. So I think money supply is going to change kind of the dynamic of business, particularly in the startup world. And I think the way that looks once that happens is the level of measurement that Forrest has been talking about becomes infinitely more important, because the marketing budgets, particularly again at these venture-backed companies, can be a third of revenue or more, right? And a significant line item at the company. And I think there's going to be some reckoning involved, maybe, and where if you don't have a good answer for what did I get out of my $1 million, you're probably not coming back to the table, right? So, yeah, exactly right. So I would, if people aren't, if you're not on your way to having that answer, I suggest setting down that path as soon as possible.
So Forrest he's ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah, he's doing exactly what he needs to be doing, right? He's measuring the effectiveness of his investments, just like every other aspect of the business, and I would say that trend probably started when I came into when I started in marketing about 10, 12 years ago. I would say prior to that, I think, if you asked what marketing did, I think the general public's impression would be, you buy blue pens with your logo on them, right?
The pretty picture people.
Exactly right. Yeah, and so the perception has definitely changed, but there's not always the data to back it up. And I think that's going to be increasingly important as money becomes harder to come by.
Okay. And Forrest, what trend are you seeing for 2019?
I think this flows very well into the conversation around the referrals. I'd say it's the trust in the brand, you know, and I think we've heard this, or hopefully you've all heard this, but like, you know, for B2B brands, you know, the consumer is not as trusting in the brand, right? So if the brand is saying something, even if it's in a compelling way, it's not always the proof point, right? A referral is you have someone saying you did a great job and we recommend them. So recommendations, you know, things like that. So I think the trend that for marketers we need to look at, especially, you know, now and going forward, is how do we leverage others to tell our story on our behalf? How do we leverage our existing customers to gain more customers? How do we create ambassadors that will go and tell our story online for us, right? How do we use influencers in a different and better and more effective way? And I think those are the things that we need. Like, we can tell the story really well, right? Even if you're the greatest storyteller in the world, you're still the brand telling the story. You're still telling how great you are. If someone else is telling that story, though, it's much more credible, and that's what people believe, and the referrals is the way that is a key to that. So I think that's it ties in very well.
And Patrick, trend?
Yeah, I think this ties in also with what these guys are saying is in the video content sphere, I think for the next year especially, we're going to put a lot of effort behind podcasting. And maybe not podcasting in the traditional way that people think. It's more to say, all right, so why is there a value for me to invite someone to come and sit down for an interview, right? The value is the relationship that gets built there. So if I pitch you with my idea for video content marketing and send you a proposal, all right, you'll put it on the pile with all your other proposals that you've received from other companies maybe. What if I invite you to sit down with me for an interview? Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about your business. Let's talk about what we do. And those conversations, which start off with some very strategic questions, tend to expand very quickly because people like to talk. People like to tell their story. People, they're proud of their business. They're proud of their company, and they want to tell you about it. So suddenly what started off as this 5-question interview turns into this half-hour conversation. And now we're connected. We have a relationship. So now when I decide to say, hey, by the way, we have this great strategy for you for video content marketing, that person's going to be way more open to listening to what I have to say because we've exchanged that. We've had that exchange together. So I think, for example, if I was, you know, any company who wants to go after a client or who wants to maybe even reinforce a relationship with an existing client, invite them for an interview. Invite them for a podcast. Invite them to sit down with you and have a conversation, get it on video, offer it to them so they can also share it with their audience. So both sides are winning there. I get great content, they get great content, and a relationship is strengthened through that. So I think that's definitely something we're going to see more of. I think we're going to see more video podcasts. I think the audio podcast world is pretty heavily saturated right now. And I think more companies, more podcasters are going to be going towards video because it's just a more complete medium where you get to actually see the person who's talking. You get to connect with them on another level. The audio is always available as well. But I think that's something we're going to see a lot more of, well, at least we're going to try to create moving forward for 2019.
Okay, and the value, is that in connecting with the audience or connecting the two people together?
I think it's both. I think it's definitely both. Because even if, you know, the audience is small, you still have that connection with the person you were speaking with. But at the same time, if you can bring that and connect with the audience as well, you're just creating a greater ecosystem of connection there that, that I think is difficult to do in more traditional ways. Yeah.
And we have one or two more questions, but I wanted to see if you guys have questions. I wanted to save some time. Are there questions? Maybe we cover those, and if we have time, we can go back. Yeah? Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things you mentioned talked about the effectiveness of video content.
Yeah.
Could you talk about some of the ways other than clicks or hits? What other ways do you measure the effectiveness of the video content you create, whether it's for your own organization or with clients?
Yeah, I think there's like the data which you'll get from the more traditional routes, right? For sure. I think it's the impact that it has on the audience that you're, for example, if you put something out there, we're just talking about this today. So let's say I post a video on YouTube, right? And I put a whole bunch of money behind it and it gets 10,000 views. Great, 10,000 people. Well, 10,000 people clicked on the link. Does that mean they watched the whole video? Maybe, maybe not. So I have 10,000 views, which is a huge number, 0 comments, which means no one was moved enough by my video to actually say something about it, right? But what if I have 500 views and 50 comments? Which one's more valuable? Is it the one with the 10,000 big number? Or is it maybe the 500 views, but of those 500 views, 50 people were so, whether moved or interested, that they took time to type a comment, negative or positive, right? So now I actually have a list of 50 people that I know I can engage with. So I think that's a way to measure that would be way more valuable than just that first number, which is 10,000 versus 500.
So you would say the value is generated from what you would do as a result
Yeah.
of the kind of results you get.
Yeah, absolutely. The engagement that you're getting with, and I think also it's up to the person who's posting that content to be active. If someone's commenting, you need to answer them. If someone's reaching out, be available, right? Don't just put it there and then ignore that, because you're not maximizing the potential of what you just put out there, of that content. So I think engagement through that content is huge. If you're creating engagement, that's definitely something that's going to be measurable in terms of results.
The only thing I would just add to that is what's the purpose of the video? What's the strategy first? Like, if you put the strategy first of, do I need awareness? Am I launching a new product and I want a bunch of people to know about it, right? So then maybe my engagement rate on my video might be the thing I want to measure. Is this supposed to be for bottom of the funnel people that are ready to buy something? So how am I using it as in there's a conversion metric associated? So I would also look at that piece as well.
So with that being said, based on what he said earlier, do you see yourselves maybe wondering, I hope I get a lot of comments so I could start some conversations, or you're just kind of leaving it open?
Or maybe there's a call to action also at the end of your video, right? So if you're trying to sell something, are people clicking buy, right? So like he said, I think you have to be strategic. Figure out, why are you creating this content first? Don't just create content for the sake of content, right? Be strategic, figure out your purpose of creating that content, and then follow it through. And if it's not working, shift gears and try something else. Yeah, yeah, no worries.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question about, you were mentioning about the iPad thing.
Yeah.
How did that work? How was that executed?
How was it executed? Okay, it was once it was conceived, it's just a matter of buying the iPads and shipping them out and returning them, right? And so we can talk about like the at the tactical level. There was we were measuring how many arrived at the person who signed for it, when was it delivered. There's a call script behind it that once we know it was delivered, we had an integration into Salesforce. It prompted the inside sales team to follow up and make sure that it was delivered properly. The last name of the person that signed for it, right? So we built an app that was customer stories and kind of functionality and a number of things about the product and about the philosophy in general behind the product, which is how and why to measure the effectiveness of IT groups in large organizations. And so there was, yeah. That's a pretty short list if you're dealing with CIOs at Fortune 500 companies, right? So there's there'll be VPs of technology and things like that. So we used a tool called Discover.org, which I think in its infancy was hyper focused on IT decision makers and people within the IT organizations. And so we used a lot of that data and we leveraged that team quite a bit to ensure that the specific data that we were using within that product was accurate. And then there's public information. We had an inside sales team whose job it was to prospect people, right? And so they would have conversations with folks or maybe somebody downloaded something on our website and we weren't able to reach them, and this would be a follow-up mechanism. There's a lot of avenues for it, but really and I hired somebody somebody local to manage it, just to come in and make sure they were charged and make sure they were being received properly. And obviously not all of them got through. Some of them would just be straight returned, and handling all of that. And eventually that stock would be depleted and we'd have to buy some more, right? Like, so, like, they get lost, you know, like, if a package arrives at your desk and you didn't order it, and like, you know, you could say, hey, this isn't mine, I didn't do anything with it. You can give it back to your assistant or whomever, and maybe the assistant opens it and decides she wants to keep it, right? Like, there could be another, like, it's traveling 10,000 miles round trip, right? Like, so who knows where it ends up. Well, the outcome of any marketing effort should be revenue, right? And so, in this case, these were, you know, not top of funnel leads, but middle of funnel leads, right? People that we knew would benefit from the product, and you know, the immediate goal of it was to get meetings, you know, some sort of a demo meeting, or you know, some follow-on sales activity with the individual. But we were measuring it down to the return on investment. Sure.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Really? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I guess this is kind of related to the videos again. You mentioned some points around strategy, and it got me thinking about the series of tactics that you might employ. And I know that could probably dive into whatever's in your magic bag of tricks, but I'm curious about what are your series of tactics for when you are working with clients, when you're helping them build their marketing strategy?
In which way?
When you talk about your explainer videos,
Yeah.
you know, you guys surely have proven success methods for how you make them, but how do you communicate or teach or train or educate them on what tactics they could use to ensure that those, for example, explainer videos are effective?
Yeah, I mean, for us, you know, our business model is really more on the production side.
Okay.
You know, like we'll work with marketing companies, we'll work with advertising agencies, we'll work with companies who already have a strategy in place. Obviously we can consult, obviously we can present ideas, but I think in the end, like, I think what a lot of these guys are saying is really that strategy has to be established before you even get to the part where you start producing the video, right? Like, don't come in and be like, all right, let's produce a video, then we'll figure out how to use it. I think the opposite's more important. Have a very good reason why you're producing this video, then once it's done, you're already ready to go. The pieces are all in place, you're ready to drive and see what happens. But I think, again, it's really just producing that video isn't going to create, there's no magic trick behind the video itself, no matter how great the video is. People have to see it. And even once people see it, oh, that was cool, next. No, you want that video to produce something. It's got to produce some sort of action. It's got to produce some sort of follow-up. So I think that's maybe the greatest strategy, is figure it out first, then start producing a video or videos, a series, or whatever you want to do. But figure that out first, and then get to work on the actual content. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, cool.
What?
Yep.
MakerBot, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is in relation to some things I've heard about, say, in West Africa. There are people out there who are now learning how to make their own 3D printers. Personally, that seems like a good growth opportunity for some companies like MakerBot. Do you see possibly that can be something that could expand the capabilities of MakerBot itself, possibly creating a community not just around the products you create with your MakerBot products, maybe work with people who are building printers as well?
Yeah. Well, so the old saying in MakerBot when they were first born was, you could print a MakerBot with your MakerBot, you know. So it's a very old way. So that audience is a couple different audiences for 3D printers, right? So there's like what they call the makers or the consumers. Like the makers are like the tinkerers. They're the ones that are figuring it out. And so what actually they've seen, you can see in the last year or so, the industry is reporting, you're seeing more makers that like it's kind of going back to kits. Like, so you still have like those makers, they want to tinker, they want to create their own thing, they got a workshop in their basement or in their garage. Those are the folks that are doing that. Where MakerBot is gone is we've kind of moved on to like the B2B business, because what we realized is that business wasn't really the right business for us. and there's plenty of people that serve that market. So we're more about going for like a professional tool that can be used either in a classroom for a school, or it can be used by a professional like a manufacturing organization, for designers and engineers, of how they can iterate products, bring products to market faster. So it's a very different thing. But there's still,
I read somewhere about some sort of STEAM book that you guys have been
yeah.
working on.
Oh, so you know, very good. Yeah. So STEAM and STEM, that's 100%. So we create, that's one of the unique things about MakerBot, is we don't only create the printer, we create all of the tools that like a teacher would need to make it work inside the classroom. So we've written books, we have tons of lesson plans, so we've created this whole ecosystem so to make it simple for them and easy for them to incorporate. Just the printer itself doesn't do it. Yeah. So, but that's, yeah, very good.
Okay. Do you want to, we can go through and you can pass because, yeah, let's go through if there was a mistake or.
I need to think about it. There's plenty of mistakes. I just don't know which one I want to talk about. Can I temporarily pass?
Let's go. Do you have any?
I think your biggest mistake is not trying enough things. One thing I've learned is that there's no like universal right answer in marketing for every product or every service. And so I've seen, like when it comes to online channels, I've seen LinkedIn work exceptionally well for somebody. I've seen Google work exceptionally well. And again, you know, when the iPad idea was first floated, I was like, this is insane, right? And so I think it's really, I think the mistake is not exploring some of those crazy ideas and really pursuing them. And again, I'll keep coming back to this, but it's measuring their effectiveness and making sure that they do work. And if they do work, keep at it. And I'd just add one thing to that, and that's something that works today isn't going to work tomorrow as well, right? Which is why you need to continually monitor the performance and outcomes. So, yeah.
No, I think that's good. And I've always said that, like, it's like the thing that works today isn't going to work in 6 months, and the thing that worked 6 months ago is probably not working today. So if you're not constantly iterating and testing, I'd say that is certainly a big mistake. And I'd say it's like back to, I like the comment that you made of that, you know, when you can get a lot of smart people. This is probably the mistakes, right? If like mistakes that we made any is I have a lot of smart people on my team which can talk themselves into and out of just about anything in a matter of minutes. But what you have to get away from is the talking about it and then almost over collaboration, and then the execution fails, right? And then just try it, just go do it. Like, you know, like you don't have to, everyone doesn't have to agree on it. And sitting in a room, you're never gonna know all the answers. Like the market changes so fast, the digital landscape changes so fast. So it's like if you're not executing and trying and testing and iterating, then you don't know. So I'd say like before we had the data points, it was very difficult to do that because you also got to be able to track it. Like you got to know the thing that I did, what was the actual impact and what was the outcome of it. You know, like, so it was maybe beyond clicks, right? You know, you want to know what's the revenue it drove, what's the pieces that were there. So I think like all those pieces have to come together. But I think that was probably the mistake, is probably like too much conversation and not enough action. And that's something that, you know, you got to be able to execute fast and just try it. Even if it's wrong, just try it. And then if you not learn something, then move on and do something else.
Yeah, I think in the same line as that is, we're just talking about this today, is don't focus too much on the tiny little details, right? So like in video production, like you can get trapped, you know, in the design thing, you can get trapped spending an hour on a freaking font size, right? You're like, oh, but the text needs to be a little bit smaller, let's make it a little bit, nobody cares. Like nobody cares. Your video is gonna go out, people will watch it, it'll do what it does, and then people are just gonna move on. They're not gonna like, oh man, I was gonna buy that, but that font size is too small, so I'm out.
They used Arial. I don't know.
Arial, I'm a Helvetica guy,
yeah,
it's not gonna happen. So yeah, I think we get trapped though, especially in the design world where you're so passionate about what you're doing. You can't look at it from your own perspective, you gotta bring in other people's perspectives and be sure that you're like, hey, no, the font's fine, just move on. Okay, fine. Right, so like I'm one of those people, I get trapped in those little details, but the people who are watching it, the people I'm trying to convert with these videos, they don't care. They just care about the message. Is it well made? Is the message clear? Yes, great, you've done your job. So I think that's what I would say is a big mistake people made, is to get too caught up in the little details that don't really matter from the bigger picture.
You mentioned people not trying enough new things, and I totally agree. But I think that also the polar opposite of that happens when people try to do everything all at once. I'll sit down sometimes with a CEO or a EVP, some decision maker at the top, and I mention public relations, and he goes, yes. And then I mention it, email marketing, and she's like, that's great, we need to do that. And then all of a sudden we're checking off every single service that FischTank has ever offered. And it's almost always a sign if they don't have our potential client doesn't have like some semblance of internal structure, that they're not going to be able to do everything at once. And typically when you try to do everything at once, unless you do have that structure, something's going to fall flat and it's going to drag everything else down. So we've talked a lot about meaningful content, especially with video, right? Like if you make great video, just make sure you have a way to distribute it, right? To disseminate it to your audiences. Or let's say you have a huge email list and great open rates and click-throughs, and like video, I got to do video, and you shoot it on your iPhone and it looks like a hostage video, then you're going to like run into some problems there. So a lot of the folks that I sit across from, I try to explain like, okay, well, how do we do some of the, like, what do you already have in place that can facilitate some of our ideas and some of our expertise, and then how do we build on that? And I think just as a service provider, obviously, that's helped us setting those expectations and building blocks, and that's why some companies that we've been working with for 3 years, they started with a very basic program where we wanted to just get some social media up and running, some corporate announcements, a little bit of blogging and media exposure, and then all of a sudden a few years later we're doing like all the fun stuff we talked about, videos and surveying and things of that nature.
Any other questions? Okay. I think we can wrap it up with a quick question. If you have any advice for the folks here, for B2B marketers, something you would like to share, and if you don't, we can pass, but let's do that one.
Sure. Step out of your comfort zone. I think that's, I mentioned challenging clients and trying to think a little bit more objective driven, and those things are certainly very important, but I think also doing things that just put you in new situations where you're exposed to new people. Again, I keep referencing when first got into media relations, which was 10 or 11 years ago, and then I evolved as a marketer and I started going to very like e-commerce specific events and conferences and trade shows, because that's some of the folks we were working with. And but then our business started to evolve, and I wanted to evolve too. So started going to more specific events where there's not a bunch of other communications and marketing people, right? Maybe it's the sort of thing that, like, if my competition's not at it and I have a lot of competition, then maybe I should go, even if it's subject matter I'm not 100% comfortable with, or something that pushes my boundaries a little bit. And I think that certainly has helped us, and we've tried to put where applicable some of our clients in the same situation and encourage them to go step outside their comfort zone, and it's benefited them as well.
Advice, frankly, my biggest piece of advice is get to know your sales team, particularly your inside sales. They really, their success, your success hinges on their success, right? So you can develop all the greatest leads in the world and be producing the best content and talking to everybody, but until that guy picks up the phone or girl picks up the phone and gets connected with the person who has been interested in talking with you, like there's no path forward, right? So, and if you don't have a strong inside sales team manager, you need to pick up that baton and do it yourself. Like you need to measure how many times they're connecting, how many calls they're making, how many times they're connecting, how many favorable conversations are they having, how many meetings are they getting out of it, how often, from what channel, right? Like you really need to know everything they're doing. Do they have even basic objection handling skills, or are those things scripted? Like everything can be tailored. Like there's so many tools out there. You know exactly who the person is that's come to your website and filled out your form before it even reach, or at least you have the ability to figure this out before you even pick up the phone. And this can be within, by the time it goes from HubSpot to Salesforce, for example, you can know what company they are, how big the company is, what their title is, who they report to in a lot of cases. You can know so much about them. You can get lost in it too, but really, my number one advice is make sure you're on top of the sales team, because without them doing their jobs, you're not going to get, no revenue is going to come out of your marketing activities, no matter how good you've done it.
I think that's good. I like that. I'd say probably back to the comment on the strategy piece before. Start with the strategy. I think as marketers, you can get easily pulled in many different directions. We need to do video. We need to do content. We need new technology. We need to do ABM. We need to do whatever that is, and it's really easy to get kind of like caught in the buzz. But like start with the strategy and then decide what are the right pieces, because there's tons of technology. I think now in the MarTech space, I think it's now over 4,000 software companies or something like that. Maybe it's one less because Marketo got bought by Adobe, but but there's still there's a lot of consolidation that has to happen there. But and those guys call every day, right? And there's emails. I'm sure you guys all get them every day. So it's easy to get caught in that. But it's like make sure you have a really clear understanding of where you're going and how you're going to measure it and what your output needs to be before you head down the path. So I think that's the biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, I think advice for me is balance between production and distribution. Yes, you need great content. Yes, you don't want that shaky iPhone while you're driving your car kind of video going on too often. But even great content, if there's no distribution, no one's going to see it, right? And if you do have a great distribution channel, then maybe you need to double down on it, because 6 months from now the rules are going to change and it won't be a great channel anymore. So test your channels, constantly keep testing your channels. If something is working, you might want to double down on that. Make sure you maximize its potential, but get ready to shift, because chances are it's not going to work in 6 months and you're going to have to try a different strategy. So great content, but also great strategy when it comes to distribution.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for sharing these great insights. We're videotaping, so I'm going to be watching it again because there were some very nice nuggets there. And a quick round of applause. Thank you very much.